Good evening, Ed.
Good evening, John. Got there
Right,
in the end.
so we're going down a time portal tonight in more ways than one because it seems to be that we can't broadcast to both channels at the same time, which is very confusing. Because we've done it in the past by mistake a lot. Therefore, we shall be broadcasting tonight on the old channel.
And we got our
Um,
own shiny new channel, so make sure you go over there and subscribe.
Yeah, so we're broadcasting on Chasing Descent just now, and we will be moving everything over to the outer place for the rabbit hole stuff. So if you want your weekly fix of Ed, then you need to get to the outer place. You okay, Ed?
Thanks.
Did you have a little, did you have a little spasm there?
Well, yeah, I can't imagine that anyone wants to show up and listening to me chat shit for 2 hours every week.
Well, people do it all the time.
I
So I've
know.
left a message on the other channel. Moved back to the. This is ridiculous. It's always the same with technical issues, isn't it? You know, what's the point? What's the point? It's IT's not. It's not science. It's an art. Anyway, tell you what got me about this channel about this tonight's subject was this scene here, right? 23 questions for Greta Thunberg, 19th century gold miner and time traveler. Because you have got to admit, Ed, that is a dead ringer.
Well, yeah, for a single facial expression, I
And braid, and hair braid,
well, yes. I
and
mean,
Swedish, and
I mean, it's not outside of the realms of possibility for someone to look for two people to not look identical. I mean, look at the number of lookalikes that famous people have.
yeah.
So
Hold on a minute. What's going on here? We seem to reverse roles.
well, yeah, I mean that's this is the joy about the show is that we're not restricted. I mean, I'm a big sci-fi fan. My favorite episodes of Star Trek were always the time travel ones.
Yeah, yeah,
Actually, there's a in Star Trek Deep Space Nine, which was a much underrated series. There's actually a double episode in season 3 called Past Tense, and it's if you go back and watch it, it's it's not quite predictive programming, but the United States that exists, and I think it was set in 2023 or something like that.
yeah.
And in the storyline, it's sort of part of there's essentially a riot that happens, and because of the response to the riot, it all kind of sparks a whole load of change in the US and stuff like that. But without being too long winded about it, the United States that they depict in that double episode is frighteningly close to what we've got now.
Yeah, well, we're actually getting quite close to some of the things that are supposed to be going wrong because the who was it? Was it Madman Macram, the guy that? Do you remember the guy that was on the Art Bell show? And we did a kind of episode on this before, but this guy was on the Art Bell show. He'd phoned in and he'd been caught stealing power transformers from the local power company, old power transformers, because he was trying to make a Jacob's ladder that was so powerful that it could be 8 feet wide because he wanted to what was I going to say? He wanted to what would you call it? He wanted to step through a portal because he'd built a smaller Jacob's ladder using a 20,000 volt power thing, and when he was throwing screws through it, they would disappear and then reappear some slight distance away. So he was thinking that if he could build a big enough Jacob's ladder, he could jump through it and travel in time. And he reckons he did, but nobody's heard from him since.
Um, yeah, well,
Nah, well, yeah.
the
So
thing is that if you're gonna start messing around, unless you actually have a very fine-grained control over whatever device that you're creating. Because let's set aside any kind of impossibilities. Let's assume, for the sake of this show, that it is possible to time travel by some means. Now, assuming you could create something like a time machine, you would have to be able to control it, because you could jump so far back before the Earth had a breathable atmosphere, or you could jump back and immediately get eaten by a dinosaur. Maybe that's what happened to that dude. You never know.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, the whole concept of time travel is absolutely fascinating. And there are some. I mean, Star Trek's done it quite a lot of justice. Not so much in terms of the technology, because their whole. I mean, I think the one where it's a Star Trek movie where they time warp around the sun.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the whole theory is that Mr. Spock gets his calculations exactly right, and they hit exactly the right speed and the right angle around the sun, and then somehow they can travel backwards or forwards in time. Or
Yeah.
Superman, was it the first Superman film with
Yeah.
Christopher Reeve, where
Yeah.
he's specifically instructed by his mum not to muck around with humans, and then Lois Lane gets crushed in a car and he loses his mind and spins
Mhm.
around the world really fast and essentially manages to reverse time by getting the Earth to spin backwards on its axis without any kind of concern for, I don't know, little things like 1,000 mile high tsunamis and all this kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Physics.
Um,
Um.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it and I mean, what's your theory on the actual on time travel itself? Do you think that this is something that is possible and we just haven't discovered how yet, or do you think that there's some sort of
Well, first of all, aren't we traveling through time right at this very moment?
well,
Because we
time
are
in it?
continually moving forward, aren't we?
No, no, we're not. We're always in the present moment.
Well, the present moment as you perceive it, or are we? See,
But the
this
future,
is the problem, right? Because if you think about it, the cosmonaut guy, the guy that did 803 days on the International Space Station, they reckon he has stepped into his future because he's 0.02 seconds ahead of where he should be.
um, yeah, but every time the clocks change, we time travel by an hour.
No, we
Or
don't, because that's just an arbitrary measurement that we've put on something. We haven't that doesn't make any difference. The clock, the time zones, they don't make any real difference because if you're experiencing time as we are just now, right? And you say we're in the present, which is fine, but that present in 10 seconds is now going to be the past, and the future in 10 seconds is going to be the present. So aren't we continually moving forward in time? And that again, do you have to, right? So Einstein tied time and space together, and we are moving through space. If we go if
time is an artificial construct, though. That
well,
we've
how can it be? How can it be?
Well, because humans have created clocks and watches and
No,
means to.
the
Well,
measurement that we call time is an artificial construct.
it's based. I mean, our time is it's based on our environment. I mean, if you look at my seagulls, for example, I wish they had a concept of time, but they don't, because the time that those little feathery
Hmm.
factards wake me up in the morning depends on the season, and it's getting
Yeah,
earlier and earlier and earlier, and it's driving me absolutely potty.
yeah. Just think you're so lucky you don't live in Scotland, or you'd be getting up at four
So, I mean,
o'clock.
to a gull, or to a creature that's not sentient in the same way that we are, in terms of actually thinking about stuff,
Yeah,
um, time doesn't exist. They only exist in the present moment. And if you look at a dog or a cat or a gull or any other creature apart from humans,
yeah.
they're not thinking about past and future. They just exist where
Okay.
they are.
But so regardless of whether we think about it, then we only exist where we are? Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
or do
It,
we?
it well, the whole point. I mean,
Do we exist at every point in time simultaneously?
well, that's. I mean, that's the multiverse theory. I mean, there are some fascinating theories about every decision that we make. Say you find
Mhm.
yourself in. A good example when I was at school trying to decide where to go to university. Um, I was at a very noticeable fork in the road because my mum was trying to encourage me to stay in Holland, and I'd always wanted to find out what it was like to live in the UK because I'd never done that, even though I'd always been brought up as English. And
Mhm.
so I actually made a decision to come here. Now, one of these multiverse theories suggests that in some sort of alternate parallel universe, timeline, whatever, I made a different decision and we're not actually having this conversation and I'm speaking Dutch to someone and living a completely different life.
Mhm.
But that's not time travel.
No,
That's the multiverse theory.
no, but I'm not purporting that as what I'm purporting is forget the multiverse, right? And think of time as a sliced loaf, okay? And each slice of the loaf is a particular period in time, okay? Now the question is, does time exist only at one spot, or does the past still exist after it's been, and does the future exist on this loaf, although it's still to come? And can you dip in and out of that loaf at any point? Because if you can dip in and out of that loaf, that would be true time travel,
Yes, yeah, agreed.
right? So if you think time travel is possible, then you have to imagine time as like a like a loaf, a never-ending, infinite loaf, and you can dip in and out of any of the slices at any point. So to do that, though, to do that, you would need to be able to manipulate something that would allow you to exist outside time for the time it takes to get to the point where you want to dip in again.
I mean, you'd also have to have some mechanism to control it, some sort of time
Yeah,
machine,
yeah,
whether it's a DeLorean or H.G.
yeah.
Wells's time machine or Starship Enterprise that you can fly at faster than
Yeah.
light.
But
Um,
if you're thinking about things like black holes, and which I still have a big problem with because mathematically they can only exist in a topically flat universe, which this is not. So black holes are an issue, and warp corridors, warped space time is a big problem as well because although they call it space time, what's it? Is it warping time or is it just warping space? And
and do we even actually understand it? Because I mean, if you look at, I mean, it was Einstein that came out with the concept of space time, and
mhm,
it's his general theory of relativity, which allows for the possibility of time travel, assuming one can move faster than the speed of light. But that assumes that Einstein's theories were correct, and
mhm,
quantum physics. Once you get down to a quantum level, everything changes because
yeah,
you've got things like non-local quantum causality, where two quantum particles that are separated by massive distance can influence each other. And
well, right. So here's one way of thinking about non-local causality, right? And I heard this the other night actually, and it helped me a great deal because as Einstein called it, spooky action at a distance. But it doesn't
mhm,
need to be. So if you think about it, right? If I write you a letter, so you're sitting in, the south of England. I'm going to write you a letter, and I'm going to write another letter to Mark, who's in New York City. Okay, and I'm going to send those two letters. Those two letters have one. in one of them and 2 in the other, right? Okay.
Mm.
So when you get your letter, you don't know what's in your letter. Mark doesn't know what's in his letter, right?
Well, it's Schrodinger's letter then. I mean, you're talking about Schrodinger's cat, the
Yeah.
Schrodinger's
Well,
cat
yeah.
paradox.
But as soon as you open that letter, I know if right you know that Mark has a 2 if you've got a 1.
Right.
Therefore, the information hasn't changed, and the act of you opening the letter didn't change the information. All it did was inform you that the information was there.
So how are you tying this into time
Well,
travel?
if you take
Sorry.
this, if you well, I'm not tying it into time travel. I'm tying it
Oh,
into
okay. No, that's good.
non-locality.
I thought I was missing something.
No, I'm tying it into non-locality because the problem with time travel is I don't see a mechanism for doing it. That's the problem. If I did see a mechanism for doing it, I would have invented a time machine and gone back in time because it's got to be better than this shit.
Yeah, but then the problem with that is that then it's the grass is always greener on the other side, and it always seems the past might it might seem idyllic, but
Mhm.
that's also because sometimes we look back at it with rose tinted spectacles, and
Indeed, we do.
you don't consider some of the negative aspects of it.
Well,
But it's also
yeah.
you would then run into the problem of the grandfather paradox, which is where if you could travel back in time and you happen to do something that interferes with your grandfather and your grandmother getting married. I mean, this is the whole Back to the Future thing where
Yeah.
Marty's mum ends up falling in love with him and not with his dad, and he ends
Ah,
up having to sort out a little sticky problem.
I don't think the grandfather paradox could ever come to pass because I think there must be some kind of mechanism in the universe that would stop you interfering with anything to do with yourself. It might be a bit like Time Cop. Was it Time Cop, where you couldn't touch yourself because
Yeah,
if you
no, there's one
touched
of
your
them. Yeah.
if you touched yourself, you annihilated yourself, because that would avoid you making paradox type decisions because you wouldn't be able to interfere with things that directly
Why?
affected you.
Why would the universe?
Well, the problem, right? So the problem is as in the paradox itself, isn't it? Because if you interfere with your grandfather and he never is able to sire you, how could you interfere with him in the first place? Yeah.
Yeah.
So how could you, if you interfered with your grandfather, it would stop you being born?
Well, you would but the thing is that,
Would you instantly disappear?
well, no, because it's not. If you look at the way that, I mean, Back to the Future actually a terrible example from a time travel
Yeah.
perspective,
Yeah. It is.
but it illustrates the point that we're trying to make. That the thing is that if you are saying that time is a loaf of bread, then
It's
the
already
number of
fixed.
slices. But you see, you don't meet and fall in love with someone in the space of one slice. You could kill someone. I mean, you could accidentally run your grandfather over with a car, and that would stop you. But then, if you did that, you would instantly cease to exist, unless when you travel back in time, you somehow become dislodged in time somehow.
Well, then you're going down multiple time streams, aren't you? Because then it could be that you're not affecting your own time stream, you're affecting a different one. In which case, then it wouldn't be a paradox because you wouldn't affect yourself.
But then somehow, but then
This is the
okay,
kind of you need to be
yeah.
baked to have this kind of
Well, no,
conversation, do you not?
this is why I'm smoking copious amounts of.
Shh, shh.
Not. I'm not smoking at all. Smoking's bad, kids. Don't smoke.
Yeah, don't do that.
Just say no. But these are sort of great conversations to have. But
Hold on, I'm sorry.
well,
I'm sorry. Gunky Fadget says, have you thought about involving a tech guy in your YouTube efforts? For fuck's sake, I've got a master's in IT.
I don't have a master's in anything, but I've worked in IT for 30 years. I'm just not in charge of the channel.
Exactly. Well, it doesn't matter. YouTube is a law unto itself. For fuck's sake.
Oh, and Shalini, I've just seen you, The Time Traveler's Wife. There's a brilliant book about time streams called Nomad of the Time Streams by Michael Moorcock. He's a fantasy author. And I read that book. It's quite old, but I read that at university, and it's an interesting exploration of a person who becomes dislodged in time. Because I mean, going back to what you were saying, John,
Yeah.
I fail to see how you could become dislodged in time, because if you travel back and then you interact with your grandparents, for example, and you do something to interfere with your grandparents getting together, either you run one of them over, or you fall in love with your grandmother, or whatever, and suddenly their futures change, that would mean that you were never born, and you wouldn't be. And if you're never born, then you couldn't be in a position to do that. I just don't. I don't know. But this is the great thing about when you start talking about things like time travel, because you end up with all of these paradoxes, like the grandfather paradox,
Yeah.
that you do have to be very baked to even really be able to get your brain around a little bit, and even then you just end up kind of getting lost.
Yeah.
But
Right.
yep.
Let's go into what would you call it? What the, hold on. I did have some web pages here.
It's a great organization here. We need a producer or something.
Well, I keep asking for a producer, and then nobody volunteers to do it, and then they all turn up in the chat and start talking to you when they could actually be producing. You know. So.
Well, yeah, but nobody else wants to be responsible for the internet gremlins, because we all know they happen.
Yeah, well, that's true. That's true.
That's true.
Right. The in 1901, two English women, Anne Moberly and Eleanor Jourdain, took a vacation to France. While they were there, they visited the Palais de Versailles because that's what one does. And they visited what's known as the Petit Trianon, a little chateau on the palace grounds that Louis the 16th gave to Marie Antoinette as a private space for her to hang out with. While they were there, they claimed they saw some odd occurrences. They said they spotted people wearing anachronistic clothing, heard mysterious voices, and saw buildings and other structures that were no longer present, and indeed hadn't existed since the late 1700s. Finally, they said, they caught sight of Marie Antoinette herself drawing in a sketchbook. So they claimed to have fallen into a time slip and been briefly transported back more than 100 years before being jolted back to the present by a tour guide. Did they really travel back in time? Probably not. So one of the explanations is folie à deux. Right? A joint delusion. Now, I believe that's going to be a movie soon. I don't know what it's about. I did hear that guy, Jeremy Jans, who is an American, call it folie à deux.
Oh dear.
But yeah,
it's a rare American that can do other accents.
yeah. So then, roughly 10 years after what had occurred, they wrote a book about it and called it An Adventure. And these days, that book is available as The Ghosts of Trianon. Check it out if you like.
I struggle to see how that's anything other than people trying to write being in France, being on the wine, and coming up with a funky story and saying, let's turn it into a book. I mean, do they genuinely believe that happened? Because
Well, I
Has it happened to
understand.
anyone else?
Well, see, this is the thing because people do talk about. Well, yeah, time slips have allegedly happened to other people, haven't they?
No, I meant has it happened
Oh, is
to
that
other people
particular one?
at at Versailles?
Well, what is a ghost?
A very good question.
So, is
Although
it
that's probably
possible?
one for another show.
Well, maybe not, because as a ghost, a glimpse into someone that's stuck in time. And when I say stuck in time, if you think, and we all know that the universe is nothing but frequency, right? Might even be a hologram on the edge of the event horizon if black holes exist. But if that's the case, if could there be a glitch in the frequency that keeps bleeding through to this frequency that we are on just now and replays? Because ghosts tend to do the same thing all the time. It's not like they don't tend to take independent actions, do they? Because they'll be seen staring out a window and turn away or whatever, or they'll be seen sitting at a desk or something, get up and walk through a wall. But that's the kind of thing that repeats. So it's as if they're like a tape recording gone wrong and it's just repeating.
Or we're energetic beings, and the person who's died because of whatever, because ghosts are also associated with um, things like horrible deaths, where some girl drowns in a well, and then people hear voices coming from the well hundreds of years later.
Yeah.
Maybe we leave some sort of energetic signature, and if we're in a state of massively heightened emotion, that um, that energy can leave a trace behind after the person isn't there anymore.
Yeah.
Um, or there's the whole restless spirit idea that the person's spirit has left their body, but the spirit isn't ready to move on to wherever spirits go after they're not here anymore. And that they're somehow clinging on. That's another theory
Hmm.
behind ghosts. Um, I mean, there's I don't know. It's a fascinating subject. Whether it's connected to time, maybe. I mean, this show is all about um, entertaining the
Hmm.
impossible and exploring the unusual, and that's what we're doing. So yes, it's possible. Do I necessarily? I struggle to understand from my own. I mean, one has to approach not the science, but the scientific method,
Hmm.
and it's a good. It's actually a good way to try and arrive at truth, as long as you don't just get. As long as it doesn't become the science, where it becomes a religion, and it's not about genuine exploration.
Yeah.
Um, it's a good way of attacking problems, and this whole idea of either ghosts or time travel. I struggle to see how one could do it. Even I don't know, maybe a highly advanced alien civilization. They say that some of there's theories that some of the UFOs that supposedly visit the planet are actually interdimensional, and that they come from um, like far in the future, where humans have suddenly developed this technology. I mean, why the hell they'd want to come back to 2024? I mean, unless it's just to watch the breakdown of civilization. And I mean, it might be, maybe they're actually time traveling history tours. Maybe that's
Well,
an explanation for the UFOs. Is it's basically they have
it
groups
could
of
be.
highly advanced future school children that get taken on excursions to go back and see
Right.
different periods in Earth's past.
Well, remember Al? Do you remember Al Bielek? We spoke about him before.
Yeah,
The guy,
that
the
was the
guy.
Montauk
Yeah,
Montauk
yeah,
project.
and right. So he allegedly was on the Philadelphia experiment. He was on the Eldridge. Him and his brother had joined the Navy. They were on the Eldridge, and when the Philadelphia experiment kicked off and started to go, they got worried by what was happening and the feelings and whatever, that they jumped off the ship into the ocean, except they never landed in the ocean. They landed in 2175. Right.
as you
Okay.
do.
As you do. And he woke up in a hospital bed. I don't think we covered this in the first time we spoke about this. So he woke up in a hospital bed suffering from extreme radiation sickness. That the kind you would get if you'd been in outer space. I.e. cosmic radiation. But because it was 2175, they were able to treat him. He then lived there for a little while with his brother, and they found out there were only 300 million people left. This is starting to sound a bit suspicious here. And remember, this story comes from what? The late 80s, early 90s? So anyway, he found there were only 300 million people left. There'd been a nuclear war. It had started in Iran. Right? Okay. And the world governments had all gone, they'd all really been wiped out in 2025. So what we now had was a single global government that managed the 300 people and kept people alive.
I know some eugenicists would be absolutely
Oh,
thrilled with that idea.
they'd be
Although
creaming
they're
their
all
pants, wouldn't they?
supposedly environmentalists as well, and all of that radiation wouldn't be good for their.
Yeah, I know.
Um,
Well, you say that, but look at Chernobyl.
Well, there's a very interesting podcast with Jeremy Nell, Real German Warfare,
Uh-huh.
with a guy who swears down that there weren't actually any atomic explosions at Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Now, I'm not saying that I believe that, but it's actually really worth, just if you're interested in this sort of thing, just pop along to germanwarfare.com and you'll be able to find it, or his Odyssey channel or YouTube channel or whatever. I don't think he's got a YouTube channel anymore, but he's got an Odyssey channel, and that's got a channel search function, so you can go in there and dig up that video. I watched it with an open mind, and I mean the guy that Jeremy was talking to, it was clearly believed what he was saying and had all sorts of evidence to back what he was saying up. So watch it, make your own mind up. But
Oh yeah, do you
I
remember
mean,
do you remember the guy that used to go swimming, and did we cover him in the past as well? The guy that used to go swimming in the nuclear coolant pools.
nope, I haven't.
So,
I
so
didn't
we'll,
know
we'll
that.
maybe cover that at some point, because there was a guy, and he spent his life trying to educate people basically on how safe nuclear radiation was in effect. I am not saying this is correct or not, but he did do things like he would swim in the spent fuel rod cooling pools, and you could see the Chernikov radiation below him, and there's a photograph of him swimming in the pool. And he didn't die until he was like 80 something of cancer. Sorry, I couldn't resist that. Anyway, but yeah, so there- I'm not convinced about these there's no atomic weapons types guys, because I mean they used to sit in the casinos and watch the mushroom clouds go off in Nevada, up the firing ranges.
And I mean the Soviet Union. Excuse me. The Soviet Union exploded. It was called Tsar Bomba. It was the largest.
Yeah, the largest nuclear weapon ever.
Yeah, and that's because there's the normal atomic explosion, and there's a hydrogen bomb, which is, and then there's the thermonuclear. And I'm not a scientist, so don't ask me to explain
Well,
the differences. But I know that we have these extremely powerful bombs, and we know that radiation is a thing because the person who discovered it, Marie Curie, didn't live to tell the tale for very long.
Yeah.
And then there's a horrifically dangerous, it's the most radioactive thing on Earth, and it's called the elephant's foot. And it's actually
Chernobyl.
it's under the reactor, and it's basically where all of the fuel rods and everything else melted.
Well, remember we did the Demon Core?
Mm-hmm.
A slip of a screwdriver and the guy wiped out 3 people, didn't he?
Yeah.
Well, he died, and I think another 2 got really badly irradiated.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean there's a number of of incidents of people being badly irradiated, especially in some of the third world countries or ex Soviet Union countries where they find like old Soviet Union batteries and stuff,
Hmm.
nuclear batteries, and they end up trying to scrap these things because they're heavy, so they think there's money in them. And it turns out it's spent nuclear fuel, which is more than enough to give you a very bad day.
Mm.
A very bad day. Um,
And I mean,
so,
it's like the workers and stuff
but
that actually were
yeah,
on site at Chernobyl in the first
yeah,
during the first days and hours and days of that explosion. I mean, some of them were absolutely heroic because they knew they were going to die, and they kept going even when they
mhm.
were barely able to walk. And I mean, so it's undeniable that radiation is a thing because it's something that we can detect. And
Yeah.
I mean, you can't say that Geiger counters are fake news.
No, I think nuclear weapons are a thing. I mean, I don't disbelieve in nuclear weapons. I think you can use nuclear weapons, though, especially in an airburst, and not generate a lot of radioactivity, which
That's
is
true.
which is what
That's true.
the Nagasaki and Hiroshima bombs were, because they were airbursts. So yeah, I think if you want to go dirty and blow it up on the ground, then you will generate a lot of fallout. But generally, if you're using your nuclear weapons properly, that sounds crazy.
Well,
If you're using your nuclear weapons properly, you should be able to re-inhabit the place quite soon.
well, I mean, it depends on how quickly you want to kill the civilization, because you can do an airburst, and it releases an EMP, and you can take out electricity grids
Oh yeah, Dark
that
Angel.
way.
Remember Dark Angel?
Hmm.
Yeah.
But then there's also, because one of the more common places where UFOs show up is actually nuclear
Hmm.
sites, and there's all sorts of stories that of nuclear weapons being interfered with and bases. I mean, there's one story that I read about when I did the research for the UFO show that we did, where an entire section of missile silos in North Dakota or somewhere just shut down not long after a UFO was spotted near the area.
Hmm.
And so there's people that speculate that somehow when we set off the first nuclear bombs, that it has some sort of impact outside of the planet or interdimensionally or something, and that these UFOs basically show up to stop us exploding these things. And that's why they started doing underground testing and all this kind of thing. I don't know. I mean, this is all just stories and speculation.
Yeah, yeah, I know. Speaking of stories and speculation, have you heard of Project Pegasus and the Chrononauts?
No,
Okay, let's
no.
get down this one then. In 2011, Andrew Basaggio and William Stilling stepped forward, claiming they were former chrononauts who had worked with DARPA on a project called Pegasus. It had been developed in the 70s and the 80s. They were taking a Mars training class at Community College in California. Okay. The college presumably functioning as a cover for the alleged program when they were picked to go to Mars. The mode of transport? Teleportation. The Mars jump room. So Basaggio and Stirling said that the then 19-year-old Barry Sotero.
What?
It gets better. Whom they claimed was going by, who they claimed, well, they said Barack Obama, but they claimed it was going by the name Barry Sotero at the time, was also one of the students choosing to go to Mars. They said the teleportation occurred via something called a jump room.
Is that like a Stargate?
Needless to say, yeah. Well, you ever seen the movie Doom? They've got a jump room, remember? They found a jump room to Mars. You ever watched Doom, the movie?
No, I played Doom the computer game.
Oh, you need to watch Doom the movie.
Okay.
You need to watch it. It's tremendous. Carol Urban's in it. It is good. There's even a bit in it where it goes all POV.
Okay.
Right? So the White House has since denied that Obama has ever been to Mars.
Oh dear. Just, I mean, of all of the different rumors that I've heard about that individual.
That's a new one on me.
Yeah, no, that's a new one, and it's possibly. I've heard some really freaky deaky stuff about him, and that one's the least believable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but it's also, I mean, this is the sort of thing that I don't know, tabloid newspapers and other such insalubrious publications, it's their bread and butter. And I mean, that stuff was even more rife. Well, it's probably more rife now, but I mean, that existed long before the internet, of kind of Elvis is an alien, and women that claim that they've had sex with ETs and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
But it's also, I mean, there's plenty of people that have probably claimed that they're time travelers as well.
Yeah, probably. So, Victor Goddard airfield time slip. So, Sir Robert Victor Goddard, widely known as Victor, claimed to have experienced a time slip. In 1935, Goddard flew over what had been the RAF station Drem in Scotland, just south of Edinburgh, on his way to Andover. The Drem station was no longer in use after demobilisation following World War One. It had been mostly left to its own devices. It was overgrown, just disused, basically abandoned. On his return trip, though, he got into a storm, and while fighting the aircraft, suddenly everything became good, and he came out in nice blue skies, and looking down, he saw he was over Drem. Except this time, all the runways were properly maintained and manicured. There were a host of planes, and there was a group of people running about in light blue overalls tending to yellow planes. And he's thinking, what is going on? Because the RAF at that point only painted their planes silver. So anyway, the storm then hit him again. He then had to battle the plane and eventually came out of it and was able to land at Edinburgh. So that's all very well, because when he checked up on it, it appeared that the airfield was indeed still abandoned and had never been recommissioned until 4 years later, in 1939, at the outbreak of World War II, it was recommissioned. And when he went to it, there were people there in light blue coveralls tending to yellow planes. That's quite a good one.
So what? Is there a period that planes were yellow? It's not a very sensible colour for an aircraft.
They weren't. I don't think they weren't. They weren't warplanes. They were trainers and prototypes.
Right.
But when he went there, it was indeed the planes that he'd seen.
Very strange.
Indeed.
So how? I mean, what are we talking about here? Are we? And this is just.
Well, this is a bit like the Bermuda type. You know, the guy that's flying from Bermuda to Miami or whatever and gets there 2 hours early. It's a bit like Admiral Byrd when he goes on a 2-hour or a 4-hour flight and comes back even though he only had 2 hours of fuel.
Yeah, and there's stories about starting off in one part of the Earth and coming out in the North Pole.
Mm-hmm.
But that would, it would imply that there are certain areas and times where the I don't know. It doesn't
fabric
really.
of reality breaks down.
Yeah, but how does that track with your bread slices? Because
Well,
it
I don't
I
know. I mean, I'm just spitballing here, mate.
yeah no
I
no
don't
no
have a clue.
no I get it. I'm just throwing it out there.
Yeah.
I mean, people
Well,
people in the chat are welcome to opine as well.
yeah. Well, my
Hang on, what's Rob? Rob's got something. I believe there
could be ripples of magnetic energy.
or dark matter which could cause something.
Right.
Matrix. I mean, there are theories that we're in a holographic universe. I mean,
Yeah.
that's
Well, yeah, there is.
that's
there
sort
is.
of string theory and
So there's
quantum mechanics type stuff.
a couple of things we need to define, Rob, if we're going to go down this kind of route. Okay. So, what is magnetic energy? Don't tell me it's a magnetic field, because no one has ever really defined what a field actually is. So that's a problem. In fact,
Yeah,
no
but
one
we know
really, no
we
one
know they
really,
exist.
no fields.
Well,
Field's just a word for an effect that no one can actually tell you how it happens. It's like magnetism. No one can tell you how magnetism actually works. That's the problem. So, and things like dark matter, which which should have been called invisible, made up matter. But I mean, it's. I think it's very difficult. It's very difficult to start thinking about things and trying to explain things when the concepts have never been defined and never been explored, because and scientists are guilty of this all the time. They talk about fields of force, and that means absolutely nothing. It just means nothing. It's just, as I would call it, wank speak.
Well, it's not entirely wank speak because they're trying to. I mean, just because the point I'm trying to make is just because you don't understand something or how it works doesn't preclude naming it and saying it's.
Well, you can't name it, so all you can do is you can name the effect it's having, right? Well, you can name it. You can name it if you want.
Okay,
right? But,
you pedantic so and so.
no,
I'll give you
but
that one.
right, but yeah. See, the problem is if you see an effect, you can't actually determine what's causing that effect, because they talk about dark energy and dark matter, and they need dark energy and dark matter to keep a galaxy together, or the thing should just fall apart.
Well,
because
no,
it's spinning too quick.
No, but dark. Yeah, no, I'm sorry. Dark energy. That's another. I mean, that's something else that we don't understand. I mean,
Well, we don't understand either dark energy or dark matter. In fact, we don't actually understand gravity either.
But we don't even know if there's if there necessarily is any dark matter or dark energy.
Exactly, because and this. Let's go back to basics then. Let's go back to Feynman. So if observation and experimentation does not concur with your theory, then you have to change your theory. Not just invent something that will make your theory right. Well, and that's exactly where they've gone wrong here. They've invented something that makes their theory work.
But that's what the science TM does.
Yes, it is.
And that's what the science does in all areas, whether it's archaeology or medicine or astrology or physics or everything. They get set on an idea of how things should work, and when it actually turns out that things don't work that way, instead of changing their theory and admitting that they were wrong, their egos won't let them, and their people who are paying them won't let them, and so they have to come up with ever more fantastical, ridiculous ways of trying to fit a round peg into a square hole.
Yeah.
Usually by mutilating the bloody peg.
Yeah, Robin's actually got a point there. Maybe you're on the wrong bit of the drive when it's being overwritten. These time slips.
Maybe.
It's possible.
So that's the time as a hard drive theory, which actually, when you think about it, a hard drive. I mean, not SSDs obviously, but I mean SSDs to a certain extent as well, because they operate with like magnetics and stuff. And I mean, the old hard drives would put little magnetic spots down on a spindle,
Yeah.
but they would also do it randomly. So every so often you'd have to defrag your hard drive, and you then end up with, I don't know, maybe those time slips are the universe defragging its hard drive.
Could be, but would I, that's it's as good a theory as anything else, isn't it? Really, because it's like, yeah, as Robin said, what's wrong with saying I don't know? And
Absolutely nothing.
Nothing's wrong with saying that at all. But the problem is, if you're being funded for by a body of work or by or you're an academic, you can't turn around and say I don't know, because you've got to keep coming up with answers, or you'll not get funded. And you've got to come up with answers that are appropriate to the narrative, don't you?
Well, I mean, that speaks to the way that we organize society.
Yeah, it does. It does.
And how things get funded, how money is created. I mean, that definitely is a whole other show. But I mean, in terms of science, I think, yeah, you have to be able to say that you don't know, and you have to also be able to admit that you were wrong, and not just that, but everyone else has to be okay with that as well, because it's not just an individual saying, yeah, actually I got that one wrong, let's like chuck that in the bin and start again. The problem now is that people hang their identities on these ideas. It's like Michael Mann and his hockey stick is a great example of that. Where his entire, once you wrap your identity up, or once you wrap something, an idea or anything up in your identity, suddenly, when it turns out that you might be wrong, that's actually it's perceived as an attack. And so that's why when you see Michael Mann on Twitter and he's moaning about how nasty all the climate deniers are, that's because they're not, he's completely intertwined with his theory. And he isn't, he's not objective. And the whole point about the scientific method is it has to be objective. But it's also about how society works, because the rest of us, instead of newspapers and stuff lambasting people when they get something wrong, if a more constructive approach was taken to say, okay, yeah, it's like in the airline industry, well, pilots certainly, that they operate on a no blame principle. So there's never any blame. It's not, people aren't going to start shouting at you. You're not going to get called an idiot or anything like that. And that you need to create an environment where people feel like they can speak up, and that's not where science is at.
Unless you're claiming you saw a UFO.
Well, yeah.
You got to admit that one. If you're a pilot and you say you saw a UFO, you're sunk.
It does make you wonder what they must see up there.
See that I've always said, growing up, that we were 20 years behind America, maybe slightly more in some terms. But what gets me is, as we've become more like America, we've become more and more litigious. And that then becomes a big problem for this kind of, let's look at what went wrong dispassionately and examine it and make sure we don't replicate the same mistake. So if you're now in a litigious society, you can't afford to say, yeah, I cocked that up and I'll not do it again because I know what I did wrong now and I'll learn that lesson. But you say that, people want their pound of flesh out you, don't they?
And that's down to economics, because if money creation, if the economy was organized differently, and we didn't have this super rich parasite class that was basically hoovering up everybody else's wealth to whatever extent they could.
fractional reserve banking
Yeah.
needs to go.
Oh, absolutely. But it's also they then buy the politicians because
Yeah.
obviously it was rich people that created the Federal Reserve, and so they are able to manipulate the system so it works better for them than it does everybody else, which is clearly what's going on now. But then the big question becomes, how do two nobodies sitting on a YouTube channel talking to an audience in the evening and just going from one subject to another? It's not.
We've been all over the place tonight, haven't we?
So yeah, then you get into the discussion about how you can potentially change things, which is very difficult when the whole deck is stacked against you. It's like Morpheus says in the Matrix about the agents, that they're guarding all the doors and they're holding all the keys.
Yeah.
And sometimes, I mean, the whole, going back to the original subject a little bit, the whole idea of a holographic universe, or this idea of being in some sort of matrix, whether it's a world dominated by machines and we're plugged into some sort of big tower and we're a very large Duracell battery. But then there's theories about consciousness, that consciousness doesn't. I mean, this is religious ideas more than scientific ideas, but this notion that our consciousness doesn't actually emanate from our bodies. It's like when you hold a light against a wall, if you can't see that there's a light shining on the wall, you might think that the light is actually coming out of the wall. And that's sort of what I'm talking about. So
the broken radio.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that we're basically just some sort
receiver.
of receiver for consciousness.
I quite like it as a theory. I would like some proof that it exists, but everything that you look at, it does tend to indicate that it could well be a reality, and I find some solace in that, if you will, because that then does give you the it gives you the impression that consciousness may well continue after death.
It's and this is another going back to things that like magnetism and gravity that we don't understand.
Yeah,
we fundamentally don't understand consciousness.
No, we don't. We certainly don't.
And that's why it's so dangerous when the science and arrogant little, I can't even say the words because we'll get the bloody channel banned before. The last act of Ed on Chasing Descent is to get the bloody channel banned because he starts spouting. So we're not going to do that.
Don't do that.
But we all know the sort of creature that I'm talking about when I talk about Fauci.
Yeah.
And arrogant little bastards like him. I mean, this is where, because he's also the gatekeeper. This is the thing, because he holds, or he doesn't anymore because he's supposedly retired, but someone else is in that sort of position of power. And when you control the purse strings, you've basically got an entire country full of scientists that instantly turn into dancing monkeys.
Yeah.
And they will literally do whatever bloody dance you want them to. And you just have to fire enough money at them. And if they can't do the dance, then they'll learn it, or they'll contort themselves into doing it, or they'll just make something up.
So while we're on the science subject, let's see if we can have a look at this.
If you can bend light, is it possible to bend space-time? Like wormholes, the whole Stargate sort of concept. Is that what we're talking about?
Before we get down that route, bending light, what do you mean by that, Rob? Because do you mean slowing it down? Because that's how we bend light, don't we? If you think about it. Because if we're looking into a river and staring at a fish, you know that as the light crosses the medium from air to water, it will slow down. Therefore, it will bend. Right? Now, this is the part where light, in my view, cannot possibly exist as a particle, right? Because it breaks the conservation of energy. Because at that point, it slows down. right? Because it's bent. For it to bend, it slows down progressively, as it goes through the angle of the glass or through the angle of the water, and it bends. And then you see the fish. So when you're looking through into water, the fish isn't exactly where you think it is. It's either closer or further away. Now, if you do the same thing with a glass and look through a glass or shine a light through a glass or a laser, right, it will bend, right? So it'll go into the glass and it'll bend down. And then when it comes out, it speeds back up. Now, that's the point where light can't be a particle. Because how can it speed back up? Where would the energy come from to accelerate it?
It's a photon.
No, a photon's meant to be a particle. How can it speed back up? Where does the energy come from to accelerate it?
But isn't that the funky thing about light? Is that sometimes it's like it behaves like a particle, and sometimes it behaves like a wave.
No, the funky thing about light is that's the way we describe it. Right?
But then also, what are we actually talking about when we're talking about light? Because
Well, we're talking about part of the electromagnetic spectrum, aren't we? So effectively, we're talking about frequency. And by extension, then, are you getting to the point where you're actually talking about matter as hard light? Because that was one of the geniuses that came up with that one.
yeah, but matter is just energy. Energy slowed down to a
Exactly.
slow vibration.
Hard light.
So everything. Well, yeah. And can we just go back? There's Robin left a comment that I think we should. Is a rainbow bent light? I don't think it is, because the rainbow.
Prismatic.
Yeah, because the rainbow is caused by light going through droplets of water.
It's a prism.
And so it's round, I guess, because the sun is round. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm not a physicist.
Yeah.
But I don't think the light actually bends. I think it's the can't actually trying to. I've got something in my head that I'm trying to explain, and I can't actually explain it in any way that it's going to make sense to anyone apart from me. But sorry, to suffice it to say, I don't think light bends. But then, if you have a mirror, I mean, theoretically, you're bending light then, or not? And what about optic fibers? Because you can bend an optic fiber, and it'll still transmit.
Yeah, it doesn't bend the light though. The light continues going in straight lines. It just bounces off the sides.
Right.
It's the angle of incidence, so the light doesn't escape from the optical fiber. It stays inside it. That's why you can bend. If you break the optical fiber, the light will just go straight out.
So I wonder if you can break time.
Haven't we been doing that tonight?
Well, I think we've been breaking people's brains, including my own.
Mine. There was a question Mark asked about if I'd ever seen a UFO while I was in the police. I tell you what, we'll come back to that, Mark, at some point, because that's for another night. I think UFOs. We'll be back down that route at some point.
Yeah, because UFOs usually require a whole show for themselves.
Yeah, UFOs are good.
And it's always a good subject to talk about.
Yeah.
You'd think, I don't know, if there are aliens, you kind of wish that they would actually invade. There was a great meme that I saw last week where, and it was just a text meme, but it's like the aliens, and they say, we've come to kill your leaders and take over, and the humans are all like, oh, thank God, and the aliens are like, wait, what? But it's kind of it kind of would be a bit like that. certainly in the West. I mean, our dear leaders, surely they must know how unpopular they are, because you can't point me to one Western country where the population doesn't utterly loathe the people that run the government.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not.
Oh God. Shalini's just reminded me. There's an opening. Who was that guy? His wife died recently. The
guy's wife died.
the really short guy.
Really short guy.
Yeah.
Which one?
I'll
What
get it for,
what nationality?
I can't remember. I'll get it for tomorrow. I'll get it for tomorrow, Shalini. I'll tell you about it tomorrow. Right. Where are we? Mirror.
Have you got any more time slips?
Well, we've got. Do you remember? Do you know this girl Valeria Lukavnova, who's made
No.
a name for herself as the human Barbie doll?
Oh yes, I have heard of her.
Well, she said in a 2012 documentary, right, that she believes she's a time traveling space alien whose purpose on Earth is to aid us in moving from the role of the human consumer to the role of human demigod.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I don't think she went into any further detail, but yeah,
Yeah.
that's just
Look,
nuts.
I'm sorry, but anyone that thinks that wants to be a human Barbie and goes to the extreme that girl does has clearly got mental health issues.
Yeah, I think so. I think so too.
And I mean, that's basically a person that's been completely broken by society.
Well, yeah.
Because
There's a lot of going around.
well, because I mean, ultimately, we all have to be happy in our own skin.
Uh-huh.
And you can't. There's some things you can't change, and your skin is one of them. And ultimately, none of us is all good or all bad, and we all just have to learn to live with it. And if you can't, if you're somehow not able to do that, and you feel like you have to become a human Barbie or a human Ken or whatever, it's like a donkey constantly chasing the carrot
Yeah.
and never actually getting it. What's that?
So let's end on John Titor, because he's quite famous, isn't he? Right.
Mhm.
So this is the guy that alleged that he came from 2036, and he travelled back to 1975 to pick up an IBM 5100 computer. Right. Now, he needed this, and he had to take it back to 2036 because there was a 2038 problem that was going to affect Unix across the world. A bit like the Millennium Bug that didn't really make that big a difference. So he needed this computer, so he picked it up in 1975. Then he stopped in the year 2000 for a rest. On his way back to 2036.
And he didn't bother mentioning to anyone about the whole Rona thing.
Just ridiculous.
That's
So,
yeah. That's
so he said that time travel was invented in the year 2034, and no one is able to travel forward beyond the year 2564. That's not really going to bother us too much, is it, Ed?
no. I mean, I'm hoping we actually make it to 2025. That'd be a bonus.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
wait,
the way things are going, it's not looking good.
it really isn't.
So,
Speaking of which, let's just double check that World War III hasn't started while we've been online. No, we're good. Although, have you seen, just as a point of hilarity, did you see that the Argentinian nutjob Milei wants to be part of NATO? I mean, it's not even, they're not even north.
the Southern Hemisphere. Oh, good grief.
But they also can't. I mean, it's the same with because Armenia's kicking off as well, and Georgia, because the CIA is stirring the pot in anywhere they can, and so we've got all of these completely bought and corrupt leaders who are basically just lining up after Ukraine. It's the same with the Taiwanese, and
Yeah.
it's just they can see what's happening in Ukraine, and they can see where Russia's at, where China's at, and they're lining up behind what?
Yeah.
I-
Listen, mate.
What the hell?
It's madness. I don't understand it. It's like how can two guys sitting in their respective rooms on chatting on Zoom see more than all the best military minds and politicians in the world?
Well, because they're not the best ones. Because the best ones are
Yeah,
all
they're
of the
not.
ones that I spend my time listening to. I mean, if you want to find good minds,
McGregor,
well, Judge Napolitano,
Yeah.
who I've
Douglas McGregor, Tony Schaefer, these guys.
Alistair Crook, Scott
Uh,
Ritter, Ray McGovern, Larry
Scott-
Summers.
Scott goes a bit. He goes in. He gets a bit ranty.
He does. I like him though. Because the thing is that because he's a passionate guy and he's a Marine and he's been there and
also
done
got
that. I mean, the first time I heard
Very, very dodgy background episodes.
which one of us doesn't? If you put
Mm.
any of us, well, okay, yeah, all right. But there's also a lot of stuff that gets made up as well.
Yeah, but this wasn't made up because this is on record.
Right.
So there are a few things like that.
Anyway,
so
that doesn't discount the other names that I mentioned.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. And what's his name? Larry, the ex-CIA guy.
Johnson.
Yeah, Larry Johnson. He's good. I like him.
Yeah, no, he's brilliant, and he's one of those rare people that actually is very good at explaining his kind of perspective and his knowledge, but in a way that makes it easy for someone who's not in his world to actually understand. Because I mean, it's like that particular sort of CIA and stuff. They have their language that they use, and it's all designed to obfuscate and stuff like that. And he's always really clear. And yeah, no, I appreciate all of those guys.
Yeah. So I think we've pretty much done the subject quite well tonight, haven't we?
I think we've broken a few brains, and I think we've covered it.
Mine.
'Cause, I mean, we've pretty much covered all of the different theories that there are floating out about time travel.
Yeah, it's just there's just so much to get your head around, and it's something that you would love to be real, isn't it? Because wouldn't it be great to be able to go back in time and fix things? But unfortunately, all you can do is sit there and stew about it, going, "Well, if I'd done this, I'd be a rich man by now," or if I'd done that, you know. But you can't go back and change things, which is really annoying.
The thing is that if you could, it would kind of like it would be a little bit like having cheat codes for a computer game.
Yeah.
And if it's you've probably done it yourself, where you struggle with a game, and you're playing it and you're enjoying it, but it's really difficult.
Yeah.
And then you suddenly find out about some cheat codes, and you use them, and it's fun for about an hour, and then the whole thing's boring because you basically you finish the game in an hour and you're done, and then it's just like, oh, maybe I wish I hadn't done that.
So Adam's asked, can we do a show on Orgone energy sometime?
I would be very interested to do a show. I mean, we could combine it with other either esoteric. That's Reich, I think. What is it, Wilhelm Reich, or I think it was Reich. I might have the first name wrong.
I'm at a disadvantage here.
But it's basically like a healing energy.
Okay.
And it was all the rage in the 20s and 30s, and then the technology was basically outlawed, but it was actually proved to be effective, and you can still buy these devices, and there's stories from people online who have used them to cure cancer and things like that. So yeah, we can cover that for sure.
Is this a bit like putting your banana under a pyramid, that kind of stuff? Or
No, it's it's some sort of manipulation of energy at specific frequencies and stuff like that. I mean, do a little bit of do
Okay.
a little bit of homework on it, and it's a fascinating subject. I mean, we can always cover it next week if you like.
Cellini asked us to do something.
Oh,
I can't
yeah.
remember. What was it?
What was it Shalini asked us to do?
Yeah, what was it, Cellini? See if she picks us up.
Oh,
Anyone
she's
else
probably
get
gone.
anything else? Well, she was here. She was here a minute ago. So,
Well, she's typing.
oh, she's typing. Cellini is typing.
Oh yeah, the cloud seeding in Dubai, and then all the debunking.
Oh,
and,
I've got a video on that.
and the chemtrail bots that then always pile on Twitter and just get they're as bad as the NAFOs.
See, right. Let, cloud seeding occurs, right? But I don't think it occurs to the extent that a lot of people on Twitter think it does. Because, see, if you go back and think back, Britain's always had a really wet climate. It's called a maritime climate for a reason, you know?
Yeah, but this is taking the absolute biscuit.
Well,
I mean,
right.
I agree.
Okay.
It's the maritime climate, and it's the North Atlantic, and we have. I mean, we've had solar flares, which can cause clouds and
Yeah.
rain as well. And I wouldn't be surprised if the government is playing mucky with the climate
Why?
as well. Well, I don't know. But it's the whole solar radiation management, all this climate change stuff.
Well, hold on a minute. So, let me get this straight.
Have you watched the film The Dimming?
Yeah. Right. So let me get this straight. So we're going to rely on things like wind and solar power, and then we're going to cover the sun up.
Who said that humans made any bloody sense?
Right. Okay. Let's leave that for another day. I've got a video coming out probably tomorrow on the Dubai flood, which you might find enjoyable.
I'll give that a watch.
You might find enjoyable. So has did Shalini, what was it Shalini come up with? I don't know.
Has she actually?
Oh, she's forgotten. She's forgotten. It's all
Oh,
right.
well,
I'll go.
but-
I'll check it in last.
But Shalini, if you remember before
Yeah.
next, like if you remember by the weekend, then we can still we
Yeah,
can still cover it.
yeah. If not, we'll do something else.
Yeah.
But there's plenty out there. We'll be
Oh,
here
there's-
for many a week.
Oh, definitely. And we'll be. Don't forget, we'll be on the other channel next week. So make sure
We
people
should be,
subscribe and
Definitely.
all that good stuff.
So, and also, people, if you're looking to catch up on the archive, I shall be digitally remastering them, as they say, and putting them up on the other channel. So I'll probably tweak the audio to try and make it as good as I can, and get rid of the trailers and things at the start, so that we're going straight into it. So yeah. I did try and do JFK the other day, and for some reason it wouldn't render. So
That's annoying.
I'll re-download it and make sure it goes back up, because I haven't wiped anything off of Chasing Descent yet. I'm waiting until I've got it all up on the other channel before I clear it down.
Cool.
Okay, yes, the other channel, Robin, the other channel. So Rabbit Hole stroke True Crime or whatever is moving to its own channel because it's interfering. I posted the link at the very start of this, but I shall do it again. So the other channel is, let me see. The other channel, which now has 15 subscribers, which is fantastic. Thank you. Considering we only had 2 when we went on air. The other channel is here.
Cool.
There you go. Okay.
Excellent.
Oh, that's
Right, so I
not,
guess we're
that's
done now.
not, that's not, that link won't let you in because that's my studio link, isn't it? Great. Talk about, maybe we should get a tech guy.
Well, look, mate. I would do it, but I can't. I haven't got time. I've got my own tech job. That's
Yeah.
more than enough work.
Just give me a second. Here we go. Here we go.
Oh dear.
I've copied it now. In fact, that probably would have worked if you'd just taken out the studio part, but yeah, there you go.
Cool.
There you go. There you go. Right.
Excellent. So that's
Yeah,
us.
sign up. Sign up for that one. Sub it. Oh, yeah, it's the same link. So if you'd actually took out the word studio and that link above it would still work. But, you know, I'm not asking people to do something like that for my laziness.
No, better to post it twice.
So I tell you what, this will be the last time you hear the outro then, because obviously the new channel's not called Chasing Descent, and it won't be using Chasing Descent's outro, will it? So this is your last chance.
Unless they actually watch Chasing Descent.
Yeah, and remember though, if you want to leave us a donation, you can still do it at Ko-fi.com. There's no problem there. It just all goes to the same place. So, thank you very much, people. It's been a pleasure from me, Ed.
Yes, and from me.
And
Thanks,
from
guys.
Ed. So with that, it's good night from Ed.
That goes.
And it's been great for you.
Cause I don't give a fuck what you say. Yeah, I'ma do shit my way. So you can go kick rocks, I'ma stack bricks up, build what I want to make. Yo, I got a lot of shit to say, so I'ma do this every day. I'll be writing things until I'm fucking buried in my grave. 6 feet deep under, but my body won't decay. Cause my messages are timeless, so they'll put them on display. Oh yeah, I rap with a certainty, I have a sense of urgency. A message for eternity, for everyone internally. I had some people burning me, but now they fucking learn to see I ain't the one to fuck with. Now they looking nervously, and I don't really care what you think of me respectfully. You can kick rocks if you think you're fucking better, see. I will outwork you, turn you to an enemy. Hurt you so bad that you're gonna need some therapy. I got the motherfucking recipe. I've been cooking up hits, I'ma leave a legacy. You'll be looking small when you're standing right next to me. I'm 5'10", bitch, but I'm 10 feet next to me. I don't give a fuck what you say. Yeah, I'ma do shit my way. So you can go kick rocks, I'ma stack bricks up, build what I want to make. Cause I don't give a fuck what you say. Yeah, I'ma do shit my way. So you can go kick rocks, I'ma stack bricks up, build what I want to make. Yeah, I'ma do it my way. I can't contain it, I'm coming out with a statement. You really changed, man, all your music and arrangement. You don't know shit, shut your mouth, you can save it. I'm the same dude that got his come up from the basement. 100 songs, 100 weeks, didn't change it. Experiments, development, intelligence, and patience. I'll do it all again, cause I never feel complacent. Let's keep the good vibes, positivity's contagious. I'm never looking back, cause I made a life that's passionate. A college graduate suppressing all his talents, yeah. He found a way to go and change, become an advocate. For taking control of your life, go out and battle. And you think you have a dream, then act on it. Get after it, get out your head and fucking capture it. You got one life to master it. Don't give up on your future, we all start losers. We're all late bloomers, gotta struggle through the sewer. What you say? Yeah, I'ma do shit my way. So you can go kick rocks, I'ma stack bricks up, build what I want to make. Cause I don't give a fuck what you say. Yeah, I'ma do shit my way. So you can go kick rocks, I'ma stack bricks up, build what I want